All right, I'm about to rank the top 50 outfielders for fantasy baseball. This is a super star-led, star-studded position with tons of heat at the top, a bunch of breakouts after those guys, and so much depth down the board. So strategizing who you pick, when, and why you went down that path could be the entire key to your draft. If you guys are not already, please subscribe to the channel down below. Don't forget to drop this video a like, and let me know in the comments whose rankings you agree with, disagree with, anything you want to say down there. Also, just a reminder, all of my infield rankings are out, and next up we have starting pitcher rankings, so do not miss that. But all right, let's get cooking. Easy tier one, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Aaron Judge is one of the best right-handed hitters any of us are going to see. Juan Soto is one of the best left-handed hitters any of us are going to see. You can't really go wrong. I usually like taking Aaron Judge, honestly, 1-1, sometimes over Ohtani, depending on league context. And I think one of the best spots to be in for anyone in the draft is like the 4th or 5th pick, or if you can get Soto there, there's just no stopping these guys. Quick move on. Tier 2, we start to have some fun. We have Ronald Acuna Jr., Kyle Tucker, Julio Rodriguez, Fernando Tatis. Again, another tier where you can't really go wrong, and in many draft rooms, you'll still be inside the first round when you look at these 4 guys in the draft. I'm really in Acuna, especially from this tier, though. I kind of think he's just going to light the league back on fire this year, playing with a chip on his shoulder. I don't ever see the gaudy stolen base totals coming back like we saw a few years ago when he swiped 70, but last year when he came back from injury, all the underlying data was still super elite. And again, it feels like he's coming into the season with a little bit of extra intensity just to kind of prove he's back on that superstar level. Then you have Kyle Tucker, who's going to be so productive on the Dodgers, kind of ridiculous, especially in a points-based league. A guy like Kyle Tucker, who makes as much contact as he does, will spray so many extra base hits, will find a lot more home runs in LA. Per plate appearance especially, I don't know if he's going to get hurt again. That's the big question always with Kyle Tucker, and I guess Acuna as well. He's going to be a monster. Quick note about Julio Rodriguez. If you guys play an ESPN league, he's ranked way too low in your draft board. So sneak him into middle of your second round, because if people in your league aren't scrolling down enough when you're getting to that first, second round turn, middle of the second round, he's a guy that's easily missed, and he's really, really, really good. No reason not to draft him that high. And lastly, Tatis. He'll never reach the highs he reached, before the whole PED suspension and the wrist injury and all that stuff. But he still comfortably belongs in this tier with a high floor in batting average, a high floor in home runs, a high floor in stolen bases. Just going to be a very productive player. While again, you probably just do not see 2019 Fernando Tatis Jr. ever again. And a quick note before we move on here about how to strategize your outfielders in drafts. It's kind of worth reorganizing your whole draft strategy, whether or not your league has 3 outfielders, 4 outfielders, or 5 outfielders in your starting lineup. If you have 3 outfielders in your starting lineup, I'm not really obsessed with getting one of these guys. I'd really look to the infield more so. Really judge position scarcity a little bit more highly in your draft, because we're going to go through 50 outfielders here, and I'm comfortable with basically any of them in a standard 12-team league. So if you're in a 12-team league and you're only starting 3 outfielders per team, only 36 outfielders in this list will be in a starting lineup, theoretically, for the entire season, and you're still really strong when you're in the mid-30s in outfielders. When you stretch out to more of the 4 or 5 outfielders per team, or just generally thinking about if you're getting past these 50 outfielders that need to be started in your league, that's when you probably have to get a little bit more creative. Or if your league calls for multiple utility spots, things like that. But outfield shouldn't be super prioritized the top of drafts in a standard 10-team, 3-outfielder format. But even so, you probably want to get a superstar like this, but I would really avoid getting 2, because like we're about to talk about, there's so much fun outfield depth all the way down these rankings. But moving on to tier 3, another very fun, exciting group: Corbin Carroll, Yordan Alvarez, Brent Rooker. With Carroll, it's superstar upside. On talent alone, he easily deserves to be in the tier above with, Tatis, Julio, and Tucker. But I'm a little nervous about the hamate bone injury. I know he's back playing in spring training games, which is amazing. Corbin Carroll's kind of like a medical marvel. I don't know how the guy keeps recovering from injuries quicker than any timeline that's ever suggested for him. But again, just be mindful. The power might lag a little bit early in the season. Yordan Alvarez, I don't know if he's healthy. He deserves to be here. Last year was so weird. I think he's healthy right now. I just really don't know. The Astros give me weird vibes with injury stuff, with Tucker 2 years ago, Alvarez last season. I probably trust him. I'm willing to take a risk on Alvarez, but again, I get afraid. And then Brent Rooker. This is an aggressive ranking for me, putting Rooker in this tier, but I think he kind of should be viewed as an elite outfielder, and I'm going to stand on the table to do so. Over the last 3 seasons, his average per year is 148 games played, 33 home runs, which is 10th best in the entire league, 78 runs scored, 90 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, a 268 batting average, and 852 OPS, which is in the top 20 of the league. To have a 3-year window where you're able to do that, still be squarely in your prime, being one of the best hitters parks in all of baseball, being sneaky one of the best lineups in all of baseball, I think Brent Rooker is someone right now that's being criminally underdrafted. And again, talking about outfield strategy, if I'm in one of those 10, 12-team leagues where I'm only required to start 3 outfielders, I kind of let allowing the board to come to me, taking Rooker a little bit higher in his ADP to be my outfielder 1, because I think he's good enough to carry a team in that role. All right, now we got tier 4, still a whole crew of elite players, and this is the young gun tier. This is the guys we're hoping to ascend, take that next step. Jackson Chourio, Wyatt Langford, James Wood, Roman Anthony, and Jackson Merrill. Starting out with Chourio, again, There isn't really a lot of the underlying stuff for Jackson Churio that makes us think the step is going to happen, besides the fact that he's done it for spurts every single season, looked like an elite player. He's still just 21 years old, and last year, when he didn't look like he was even really great for most of the time, he still went 20-20 with a 270 average. There's basically no risk on him right now for where he's being drafted and where his floor is. And again, that's crazy to say because, again, it still seems like we haven't seen it yet, but you kind of know when you watch Jackson Churio, you have that feeling the pop is just around the corner. There's a really good chance it might be this year. And again, especially playing a points-based league, the amount of contact he makes really raises his floor, and I think he's just a good pick. A similar idea next with Wyatt Langford. It just kind of has to happen eventually. In terms of his quality of contact and his swing decisions, those are just too good for him not to eventually take a near superstar leap, if not better. Few players hit the ball harder than him. He lifts it, he pulls it, he has elite bat speed. Again, it's hard to find real flaws. And this point, now that we're 2 years into Wyatt Langford's career, it's kind of a bit of a conundrum why his contact rate hasn't gone up to the point where it can take these elite underlying skills and turn them into elite production. And with that, I went kind of deep in the research for Wyatt Langford. I'm going to talk about him a bit more than basically all the other outfielders in this list because there's some very strange things in his profile comparing his rookie year 2 years ago to what happened last season. Let me explain. Mainly because Langford had much better power production last season, where at the same time his bat speed went in the wrong direction. And again, looking at this bat speed distribution here, it kind of just looks like maybe he was taking less A swings, being a little bit more selective with how hard he was swinging the bat. Which again, maybe this is the case of him thinking too much, or maybe this is the case of him trying to fine-tune his approach. So again, some pretty deep data here. When Wyatt Langford was behind in the count last season, he took his bat speed down again like he did on average compared to the season before, but he whiffed significantly more often. And naturally, since the bat speed came down, the quality of contact came down a little bit too. Then when he was ahead in the count again, his bat speed was slower compared to the season before. His whiff rate was only a touch lower, though, so again, we're seeing an adjustment that hopefully should make him put his bat on the ball more often, but it's really not doing so as much. And then at the same time, when the bat speed came down a little bit, he had a much higher quality of contact, again, trying to sift through this data and see if we can see something. Then when he had 2 strikes, he took a little bit off that bat speed again, like we've seen across the board here, but he was really just not so good when that happened. On top of looking through these different counts, I tried to split out if Wyatt Langford was taking different approaches again with no one on, runners in scoring position. Didn't find anything super indicative there. But overall, like I said before, Wyatt Langford was better last year at lifting and driving the ball despite the decreased bat speed. And if you look at this advanced data of his swing tilt, which is kind of what a lot of people think that we're talking about with launch angle, which is the angle you're making contact with that ball on average, rather than the angle the ball's been launched at. Langford did increase that meaningfully last year. So again, maybe the bat speed coming down was a way that he can fine-tune his bat path, find that pull side power, which again, he did. But at the same time, it felt like some of the other aspects of Langford's game struggled because of that, especially seeing this attack angle right here where Langford was more inconsistently striking the ball. Maybe that new bat path just wasn't something very natural to him. It's also easy to forget that Wyatt Langford only ever played like a month of minor league baseball, has basically done all his development on the fly with the Rangers in the big club. There's so much good here for him to ever really be, I think, worse than he has been through these first 2 seasons of his career. I like that we're seeing active changes in development from the guy, and I really, really have faith in someone like him who, again, has all of this great underlying stuff, has the amazing pedigree, to figure it out eventually and take that leap where he can marry the good contact rate with this great pull power. There's something there for Langford, and I like to see he's trying to figure it out, but last year, again, a bit too much push and pull with it. Then we have James Wood, who last year just could not sustain the elite production that you started the season with through the whole first half, and then completely fell off a cliff in the second half. I'm going to show you guys the season splits right here. This is dismal. This is embarrassing, honestly. This is kind of similar to the PCA conundrum we have, Pete Crow Armstrong. And as Wood played so poorly in the second half, it felt like a little bit, and you hate to see this, I don't even want to say this, but he seemed disinterested at times. The Nationals team was completely out of whack. They had an interim manager. They were changing their general manager midseason. Like, the whole thing was just a complete mess. It seems like Wood kind of took that into himself. Also, maybe there was some fatigue at play. An entire major league season is much longer than an entire minor league season. A lot of times it happens with these young players just don't have their conditioning prepared for the full 162 game grind. That being said, Wood on the season still produced like an elite level outfielder, and that was still with the fact that he doesn't really know how to pull his fly balls yet. The raw talent here is so undeniable. I'm really always going to bet on James Wood eventually jumping into that top 10 outfielder tier. So I'm going to do it again. But again, seeing those splits last year, seeing him lose the focus makes me a little bit scared. Just a little bit, though. Then we have Roman Anthony, who just lit the world on fire as a 21-year-old rookie. I mean, nearly a 300 batting average and 400 on base percentage at 21 years old. First cup of coffee in the majors is crazy, over half a season. His year did end early on an oblique strain. He missed a wild card round for the Red Sox. Could be a big reason they were actually eliminated by the Yankees. Another thing for his fantasy profile, I don't know if we're at the point yet in Anthony's career where the home runs or stolen bases will be special. And he also is projected for a relatively high strikeout rate, which will hurt him in points leagues. but even the most modest projection systems out there right now have Anthony graded out as nearly a top 20 outfielder. I'm super willing to buy in on a little bit better than that price, just in case you get superstar jump right away. Now, the last guy in this tier, Jackson Merrill. It does seem like maybe he's a half step or at least a full step behind the other guys with the crazy pedigree in this group, but I truly don't think Merrill's that far off from them. After his absolute knockout rookie season, Merrill was kind of a fringy second-round pick last year in a lot of fantasy drafts, and heading into that, he was my number one bust pick. He was my number one do not draft. I told everybody far and wide, do not draft Jackson Merrill. Give myself a pat on the back for that working out. Sadly, a lot of that was due to some injuries, a hamstring injury early and a concussion late. But in betwixt that, Merrill's uber contact approach kind of let him down because the power is just good, not great. He's going to rely on the elite back control, like I said, the amazing hit tool to kind of get him over that production hump. And that makes him kind of a tweener in this group because we're looking at some of the craziest tools in all of baseball from the rest of these dudes. But again, especially if you play in those shallower leagues, this is another spot where I like to take a big risk early on one of these guys because you're drafting them easily outside the top 10 outfielders. And at the end of the day, any of these guys can be a really, really good outfield one, even in a 10-team fantasy league. And it's worth the risk on these guys, and then you mitigate your risk. You get a little bit safer down the board. You always want to kind of push some sliders back and forth with how much risk you're taking on. Like, I don't usually want to double tap high picks in this tier, and I probably would stay away from this tier entirely, again, if I'm only in a 3 outfield 10-team league, maybe even a 3 outfield 12-team league. If I had a high pick and I got one of the Judge or Soto. But again, just be mindful of when you're drafting outfielders and have some thoughts about why you're drafting this guy there and think about how it's affecting the rest of your roster and the rest of your decisions. Next tier, casting a wide net here, we got Cody Bellinger, Tyler Soderstrom, Seiya Suzuki, Taylor Ward, Jarren Duran, Riley Green, Ian Happ, and Stephen Kwan. Probably some crazy names for you guys in this tier, but I'll explain why they're all here together. First, Cody. He was so productive last year in his first year with the Yankees. He's just built for that stadium. High contact rate, incredible ability to pull his fly balls, hitting near Aaron Judge. That's 3 amazing check marks for a player to succeed in that ballpark. I think he's going to succeed there again. So really, no qualms all about Cody Bellinger, and he's the top of this tier for that reason. Then we have Tyler Soderstrom, who I talked a lot about in my first base video. I'm probably going to talk about him next week in my hitter breakout, even though we kind of broke out last year. I think there's just another clear step for Soderstrom to take. Like, I could possibly see like a 35 home run, 880, 900 OPS season. Like, I really think he has all the tools to be that dominant of a hitter. There's not really a flaw. It's great bat speed, it's great power metrics, a great swing decision, it's a great contact rate. He does everything at like the 65th to 80th percentile of the entire league. That right there is a player with very few holes. And in that ballpark with that lineup around him, I really think he has the opportunity to be like a super elite hitter. Speaking of a guy who's really above average across the board but doesn't get the credit for it, Seiya Suzuki, just so underrated for how good his skills are. I did a pretty hilarious Excel query for Suzuki where since the start of 2023, here's every single player in the league with at least a 73 mile per hour bat speed, a 10% barrel rate per plate appearances, at least a 39.8% hard hit rate, which is the league average, and less than the 25.5% whiff rate, which is also the league average. The players that spit out are Juan Soto, Yordan Alvarez, Seiya Suzuki, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., John Rave somehow, Bobby Witt Jr., Drake Baldwin, and Ketel Marte. If Seiya Suzuki stays healthy, I really think he has a chance to be one of the most productive outfielders in the entire league. And again, similar to what I talked about Brent Rooker above, if I'm maybe fading outfield early, Seiya, or who I just talked about, Bellinger, is someone I would take for my outfielder one to get a little bit more safety from veteran, again, compared to a guy like Soderstrom or that tier I just mentioned above, the Roman Anthony, the James Woods, to possibly get good enough outfield one production if I wind up with an elite infield to surround them. Similarly, Taylor Ward. Do not overlook boring productive players in your guys' fantasy leagues. Taylor Ward is exactly that. I kind of love 3 outfield builds again with Ward as my outfield one. If I'm really ready to get crazy at the back of this list, he will hit 30 homers. He will have 100 RBIs. He will do that. He gets overlooked all the time. And he's just super steady and solid. Then I got Jarren Duran. He gets dunked on a lot because 2 years ago he was super elite, similar to what I talked about Jackson Merrill. He shoved himself into that second round fantasy pick discussion. Was a big disappointment last year. And I think in real life, sometimes he also gets dunked on because the Red Sox have a bunch of really exciting outfielders, and sometimes Duran winds up as the kind of most disappointing one. But we're probably going to see 18 to 22 home runs, 25 to 30 stolen bases, and a very high contact rate in a great home park. But also, someone does have to lose playing time in that Boston outfield. Again, I don't think it's Duran, but like I just really don't know what's going to happen there. Then we have Riley Green. I think I'm a little bit lower on him than the consensus, but I really think the floor is higher than people realize, and the ceiling is still sky high if he can ever rein in some of this swing and miss. I don't really know if he wants to, and I know the high swing tilt that he has that helps him get to as much power as he does, that also forces all the swings and misses he has, kind of all ties into why he is good but also scary, who also has a kind of low floor but also a pretty high ceiling. But he's still only entering his age 25 season. The quality of contact is still elite, and I don't think there could be more swing and miss than we had last year. I'm going to knock on wood when I say that, but again, even last year being a fringy top 20, top 25 outfielder when it doesn't feel like it can get any worse, Sometimes that's fun to bet on, but maybe not as your outfielder one, like I'm saying. Maybe you pair Riley Green with someone a little bit safer with him. That's how you can kind of build your outfield. Your outfield's an organism. You got to build it. For example, pairing him with a guy like Ian Happ, ranked right here, who every single year, no matter what, it's like 22 homers, 80 runs, 80 RBIs, and 350 on base percentage. No fun, no flair, no sexiness with Ian Happ. But putting those two guys together, where you're betting on the pop with someone like Riley Green, and you know you're getting a stupid solid floor in Ian Happ, that could be fun if you want to get creative and you want to fade outfield early and try to build it out late. And last guy in this tier, Stephen Kwan, he's in this tier because he's a points league fiend. Stephen Kwan last year was the number 10 overall scoring outfielder in ESPN standard points leagues, and he didn't even have a good year by his own standards. You get Stephen Kwan, you're going to rack up a lot of points. He falls way down the board in any kind of rotisserie or categories leagues because he's not stealing a ton of bags. He's not hitting like any homers whatsoever, but he's a hack for those leagues. I also just want to point out that Christian Yelich would be in this tier, but Christian Yelich is not outfield eligible on every single website right now because he only played 19 games in left field last year, which is really frustrating. I have him in a dynasty league in Fantrax. I hate that I have to shoehorn him into my utility spot, but again, this is where Christian Yelich is if he's outfield eligible in your guys' leagues. While that tier was the tier of guys I'm targeting if I'm really trying to get creative with my outfield builds, this next tier is kind of the bust tier that I'm fading. I'll explain why for each of them now, but we got Pete Crow Armstrong, Byron Buxton, George Springer, Randy Arozarena, Kyle Stowers, Andy Pages, Joe Adell, and Michael Harris. Starting with PCA, I just think he's being slightly overdrafted right now. I'm not winding up with him in any of my teams. I talked about him recently in my Do Not Draft video, and it's just because the approach is so chaotic that you're going to have major peaks and major valleys, like we saw last year when you see PCA splits by half. Half the season, he's an MVP candidate. The other half of the season, he's Jacob Young. Just where he's going right now, sometimes he can be a fringy or a firm outfield one. I just don't trust him enough to do that. Similarly, Brian Buxton, last year was so awesome. It felt like you got over a real hump with Buxton. We were all so happy to have him healthy for most of the season. But, like, do we trust that now from a 32-year-old who has this much swing and miss in his game? I don't. And again, I'm probably not taking him this year at this very inflated price. Similarly, George Springer, talk about the revelation last season. George Springer had the third highest OPS in all of baseball in 2025 behind Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. Then it was George Springer, and then it was Cal Raleigh. Think about that for a second. Think about how we view those four players, that George Springer was right smack dab in the middle of them. Also, George Springer's had an amazing career. He's kind of getting himself close to being a fringe Hall of Famer despite the whole cheating scandal. We'll see how the committee sees that by the time these guys all hang it up. Last season was George Springer's highest WRC plus he's ever had, higher than any of those seasons back in Houston, higher than when they were cheating. That was catalyzed by a nearly 2-mile-per-hour bat speed jump along with the rest of those Blue Jays over there. And again, that was great. But can he do it again as he's in his late 30s? He can't be that good again, right? I don't really want to be the one on the other end to find out if he is or isn't. Similarly, Randy Arozarena, still productive, big peaks and valleys as a guy who has high swing and miss in his game. And I just tend to fade guys who are in their 30s with high swing and miss in their game. That's just kind of a personal rule there. And it's one that kind of works out year over year. Same idea. Kyle Stowers. I want to buy all the way in on Kyle Stowers. I really, really do. I loved what he did last season. I loved what Marlins player development is doing right now. I'm buying in a bunch of other Marlins if you guys have watched my other rankings. And he kind of does feel like Brent Rooker light, where he was a late breakout, 27 years old last year. Kyle Stowers finally got himself over the hump. He has crazy raw power, even better than Brent Rooker's raw power, but worse swing decisions than Brent Rooker. But still a lot of swing and miss. And again, you could be very productive in this league with that kind of profile, but it does tend to be a bit more erratic. Staunch respect on Kyle Stowers, but I'm probably just avoiding him this year where his ADP is. But again, still like the player and will not be surprised if he's nearly as good again. Then we have Andy Pages, who was high-key so good last year. I mean, the guy had 27 home runs, 74 runs scored, 68 RBIs, 14 stolen bases, and a 270 batting average. That is like, whoa, that's an easy top 30 outfielder right there. Pages was in that really, really good Dodgers lineup. But I feel like a lot of the goodwill around Andy Pages as last season was concluding was totally washed away with literally one of the worst postseason performances at the plate in the history of this sport. Over 55 plate appearances, the dude had an under 100 batting average and barely 200 OPS. That is unfathomably bad. And again, I think it's giving a little bit of ill will to Pages right now after it was genuinely a big breakout season. But I think that's kind of fair because there are some real holes in Pages' profile. I don't think he, in air quotes, deserved that amazing top 20-ish outfield production last season. He has middling raw power. He makes poor swing decisions. And all that great production last year, again, was held up by a very high contact rate. I like getting pieces of the Dodgers lineup because of how good it is, but Pages is probably one I'm avoiding. Probably. Here's another weird one. Joe Adell. The breakout happened. Joe Adell had a great season. But even as good as he was, with 38 home runs and 100 RBIs, Adele was only the 31st ranked outfielder in standard ESPN leagues and the 25th ranked outfielder in standard 5x5 leagues. Again, if he was a deep sleeper last year, if you picked him up off the waiver wire, that's a massive victory. But now the fact that he's being drafted around there, it adds a lot of risk because that power will be there. It could even grow. I think his contact rate last year was better than people expected. I think his swing decisions are also way better than people realize just because he swings and misses so much. But I don't know how the on-base percentage ever follows because it's a very weird bat of the ball distribution. And again, there's so much swing and miss in his game. Also, hilariously, he's only entering his age 27 season right now. And I do want to reiterate, all of that raw power, the good swing decisions, the bad but not awful contact rate, hint that there could be more coming. It's possible that Joe Adele has an improvement this season. It's very possible. But I just don't want to be the one holding the bag in case that doesn't happen. And I'd rather take the risk on someone with similar traits to Joe Adele on my waiver wire as the last pick of my draft than bet on him after the best season of his career. And to close this group out, Michael Harris, just the eternal bust right here. Even as bad as he was last year, when you took the season as a whole, he was the 33rd ranked outfielder in ESPN standard scoring leagues and the 31st ranked outfielder in standard 5x5 leagues. That's amazing, and the whole thing is spurned, as it is every single year, by Michael Harris' 6-week supernova streak, and it becomes so frustrating as a fantasy manager because you hold him through the cold spell, you'll quit on him, and then he'll have the hot streak for someone else's team who picked him up off the waiver wire. So I kind of always recommend not drafting Michael Harris, rather just being the team that picks him up and you hope to catch lightning in a bottle. But I do guess being like a fringe top third of the outfielder is his floor. You just do not want to ride the shape of that season in your lineup all year, and sadly, Harris's approach will always lead to these inconsistencies, unless there's a material change. All right, moving on here, we have 3 tiers left. Now we're starting to get very fringy again. If you're in a 3 outfielder league and you play with 10 or 12 teams as to who's going to be starting and who's going to be leaving your draft room, actually being taken, not on the waiver wire. And we got Brandon Nimmo, Jacob Marcy, Luis Robert Jr., Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz, Jose Altuve, second baseman really, Teoscar Hernandez, and Alec Burleson. Starting out with Nimmo, he took a big step back last year, and he's just no longer the high on-base percentage guy we came to know over the first part of his career. That's because teams have really stopped being afraid of the damage he could do and started throwing him way more pitches in the strike zone, so he couldn't really take them and use his great eye to be patient, work deep counts, and draw walks like he always had. So that's kind of the league telling us that Brandon Nimmo isn't really at the peak of his powers anymore, but at the same time, he's going to hit leadoff in what should be a much improved Rangers lineup, and he'll be highly productive there. Then Jacob Marcy, who I really want to be more in on right now because I do love him as a player, just like this kind of great athlete, great defender, play with his hair on fire, high contact rate guy. Those are some of the most fun players to watch in all of baseball. But he can just never live up to those first 2 or 3 weeks he had in the bigs last year when he had like a 1,500 OPS over like 40 plate appearances, and he was just hitting everything in the gap over and over and over again, just looked like a superstar in the making. Where at the same time, he has very acceptable power. It's not great, but it's also not bad, slightly better than league average. He's got big patience. He has a really nice feel for the barrel on a plus athlete. Like Jacob Marcy could be a solid player. That's why I'm ranking him right here as a fringe top third of the outfielder. I'm very fine to bet on him while acknowledging he's being overdrafted a bit. And I would really prefer to have him as my outfielder 3 instead of my outfielder 2. If he does happen to be my outfielder 2, I really want to have paired him with one of the most elite players in the league, like Judge, Soto, Acuna, Tatis, Tucker, one of those guys. Then we have Luis Robert, just why not? This is when you want to have some fun in your drafts. Again, outfielder 3, you have safety at the top. You want to bet in Luis Robert finding that near MVP caliber production we saw years ago. I think the Mets betting on him is a great sign. I think the fact that he's going to only have to be like the 6 or 7 hitter in this lineup is a great sign. I think the fact that the Mets are talking right now about really chilling him out in spring training to just hope that lower body can stay healthy this year is a great sign. I also think the fact that he still has a nearly 76 mile per hour bat speed shows the top end power is still there. Last year, totally under the radar because of how poor his production was. He had the career best 9% walk rate, still hits the ball super hard, only 2 years removed from a 5-WAR season, still plays lights out defensive center field, shockingly makes good swing decisions, has really reeled that chase rate in just enough while still being aggressive in the zone to use that raw ability. This is just the kind of guy you want on your team. You take a shot in Luis Robert in the back of your fantasy draft because you know the potential is like a true 30-30 guy. And that Mets lineup is going to be really good this season. You want cheap pieces of it. And Robert's a cheap piece of it that could be an elite performer. Now we got Brian Reynolds. I know he took a big step back last year. That's why I had to take him off that, Taylor Ward, Ian Happ crew, a tier above. But he probably just winds up back closer to his median. Like, he's just been too productive for too long to be as bad as he was last year. Sometimes you got to just kind of make those bets in fantasy baseball. Similar but different. O'Neal Cruz coming up next. Like, hello, darkness, my old friend. Like, last year was so ridiculous. 2 years ago wasn't even that bad. Like, I don't think he's ever going to have, like, a 200 batting average again or OPS starts with a 6. Like, he has to have the worst season ever again to do that again. just bet on a little bit going back to what he was 2 years ago. You still have good swing decisions with a horrible contact rate and the best raw power in baseball. And a guy who's now seeming like he's willing to steal 40 bags, which is a big help in a lot of team builds. Next, we got Altuve, still a highly productive player. Talked about him a lot in the second base preview video just because you should be playing in the second baseman. That position is very weak. Outfield is very strong. We like multi-eligibility, but again, if you're taking Altuve, plan to use him at second base, please. Teoscar Hernandez, again, similar to a Rosarena, a guy who's past 30 years old, who struggles with swing and miss issues. But also, I feel like right now he's kind of being drafted close to his floor, and I could really easily see a bounce back if he's healthy. I know he dealt with a groin thing last year, he's talked about recently. A lot of injuries crop up from the season before when a guy has a bad season, but again, still like Teoscar Hernandez. And close this tier out with Alec Burleson, a points league king, a contact maven, just enough power to still make it hurt in fantasy baseball. I love taking Alec Burleson when my whole league is sleeping in a points-based league, just because, again, that ball's in play, nonstop, no strikeouts. He'll be in a prominent spot in this terrible Cardinals lineup. We'll get tons of plate appearances. Why not Alec Burleson? Why not? The poor man, Steven Kwan, even though they played no similar game whatsoever. All right, now here's a wacky tier for you guys. Mike Trout, Wilyer Abreu, Jack Caglione, TJ Friedl, Sal Frelick, and Jung Hoo Lee. I'm just going to finish off the bottom part of this tier first because we have Frelick, and Jung Hoo Lee, points league dudes. Contact, top of batting orders, playing time. Probably not Frelick top of batting order, but again, we just see guys who put the ball in play love. We love them points-based leagues. But these first three guys here, Mike Trout, this is just kind of a fun spot to take Mike Trout. I know the swing and miss has been bad the last few years. We know the health is still a massive concern, as it will be likely the rest of Trout's career. But if you take him down here, you're not really committing to him that much. You know what I mean? Like, if you get a 30 home run season from Trout with a 250 average, that's a win at this draft position. And why now, finally, after all these years, he's kind of a fun pick. Now we have Wilyer Abreu. Sneaky, one of the most fun batted ball profiles anybody in baseball. I know there's a chance him as a left-handed bat in this crowded Red Sox outfield can get platooned. I just don't know who's being platooned with, given the way their team is structured right now. Again, like, he could beat out Jarren Duran for playing time. That's entirely possible. Do I think it's going to happen? Maybe. I don't know. It's possible. But some serious breakout qualities in Wilyer Abreu with how hard he hits the ball, how good swing decisions are, and how well he can pull and lift the ball, and just how good of a defender he is. That always keeps him on the field. And then the people's breakout, the eternal breakout, the Italian stallion, Jack Caglione. One of the worst rookie seasons we've seen in some time. Looked completely overmatched, completely outmanned, looked terrible while he was trying to learn the outfield on the fly. Didn't look comfortable at the plate. But when you hit the ball as hard as Jack Caglione hits it, it's really, really hard to be as bad as he was last season. The contact rate's also not bad. The swing decisions aren't terrible. He looks like a beast right now in the World Baseball Classic. You like to see confidence growing in a young player like Caglione who looked so badly last year. This breakout seems so obvious. It feels like everybody's talking about it, but I think everyone's talking about it because it's so obvious, because there's a really good chance it happens. A 30 homer, 270 season from Caglione, well within reach, and I want to get a piece of him on every single team I can, truthfully. Now to close out the final tier here, Lawrence Butler, Dylan Cruz, Elio Ramos, Noelvi Marte, Addison Barger, and Owen Casey. Fun one right there. Butler and Cruz were two of the top breakout picks last season. Both of them were dismal last year in their sophomore campaigns. Cruz dealt with some injuries. Butler was just gross and got benched at times. A lot of what these guys do under the hood is still quite good, or at least good enough to signal that there could be big seasons ahead. So worth taking them just for the game theory of that. Just grab sleepers, why not? Julio Ramos also took a big step back last year, but I think he's just a good hitter, still has plus power. Happy to bet on that. Noelvi Marte, get off the bus guy. Talked about him a lot in the third base preview, but he's outfield eligible. He's going to actually play outfield for the Reds this year. You just kind of bet on that physical ability. Again, why not at this point in your drafts? Addison Barger, similarly, looked really good last year and does everything under the hood that you would expect from a guy who could be a perennial 35 home run threat, but probably will be platooned in the Blue Jays lineup, so keep in mind with that. And I wanted to throw Owen Casey in this video because I want to call my shot. Owen Casey is my dark horse rookie of the year pick. I talked about him a few videos ago in rookies that are being slept on. The way that he improved his contact rate last year at AAA, when he calmed his pre-swing motions, the way the Marlins really, really wanted him and went out and got him for Edward Cabrera, probably in line to be a starter for that team. I'm a huge fan of the raw power. I'm a huge fan of the makeup and the pedigree. I think Owen Casey's in line for a huge year. And a few outfielders I want to mention who couldn't crack the top 50. Evan Carter's got great physical tools. I think he's a great player in a category rotisserie leagues. He will steal bags, will be platooned. Didn't mention Ceddanne Rafaela. As a profile, just don't want to go near. Again, categories-based league. You're probably going to get 20 homers and 20 steals. That always plays, but scared. Dalton Varsho's fun. Last swing and miss. Dalen Lyle. I want to be more on Dalen Lyle, but just the fact that it's not so good power, not so good swing decisions, everything was spurned last year by a lot of contact and fortunate outcomes of that contact. I just can't be on him, but I don't really shame anyone if they are. I think Lyle has one of the biggest boom bust profiles in the whole player pool right now. Adolis Garcia, fun bounce back in the Phillies. Mickey Moniak, daily league play in the Rockies. Trent Grisham, 30 homer bet in the Yankees. Kerry Carpenter, awesome but platoon, so he's a daily league play. Ramon Laureano, likely productive on the Padres. Jeff McNeil, likely very productive actually in Southern Park on the Athletics, but I don't know, it's a weird vibe with him. Carson Bench and Jordan Lawler, two prospects who are looking to break camp with their teams. Bench is especially exciting, but I just don't know if he has a lot of power as a rookie. Colton Cowser, similarly, post-hype breakout guy in the Orioles. Lars Nootbaar, maybe one day. Jordan Beck, Coors Field, we like that. Same with Brenton Doyle. Chandler Simpson, if you want stolen bases. And maybe someone gets injured and Jason Dominguez gets the door open for him at the Yankees. But that's it, guys. Top 50 outfielders. Mentioned like 70 outfielders. But thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Please go down there, subscribe. Starting pitcher rankings coming next. Can't wait. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.